All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving deep into a real clash of the titans in cloud messaging, Amazon's SQS versus Microsoft's Azure Queue Storage. We're going to break down how they're similar, what sets them apart, and really help you figure out which one might be the perfect tool for your next big project. But hey, before we get into all that, let's take a step back. Why do we even need services like these in the first place? Well, it all comes down to solving a super common and honestly a pretty big headache in software design. I want you to think about this for a second. In so many systems, all the different pieces are connected so tightly, so directly, that if just one little part wobbles or fails, the whole thing can just come tumbling down. It's like a chain reaction just waiting to happen. The technical term for this is tight coupling, and what it really means is that your applications are incredibly fragile. It makes them a nightmare to scale up. Imagine your user-facing app is directly tied to a background service. If you get a big spike in traffic, boom, they can both get overwhelmed and go down together. So the big question is, how do we fix this? Well, the answer is actually pretty elegant. It's a message queue. It's a simple idea, but it's an incredibly powerful tool for building systems that are way more resilient and way more scalable. You could almost call it the secret sauce for modern cloud architecture. So what is it, really? Think of it like a virtual waiting line, or a buffer. A message, which is just a little packet of data, usually representing some kind of task, gets dropped into this line. This lets all the different parts of your software talk to each other without being directly connected. And that right there is what makes the whole system so much more fault-tolerant. It's really just a simple three-step dance. First, a producer, which is one part of your app, enqueues a message. It adds it to the line. Sometime later, a consumer, another part of your app, grabs that message and starts working on it. And then, once the job's done, the message gets dequeued, or just removed from the line. See? This whole process decouples those two components, so they can work at their own pace and even fail independently without taking down the entire show. Now, this slide here is super important because it clears up a massive point of confusion out there. A lot of folks mistakenly compare Amazon's SQS to Azure's Service Bus, but that's not really an apples-to-apples comparison. As Microsoft MVP Sean Feldman points out, the true counterpart, the real equivalent to SQS in the Azure world, is Azure Queue Storage. They're both designed for the same kind of simple, task-based queuing. Okay, so before we jump into what makes them different, let's talk about the common ground they share. Because at their core, SQS and Azure Queues are really built from the same architectural blueprint. You could say they have the same DNA. Their main purpose is to be that reliable, scalable buffer between your application's components. They both use standard web protocols, which makes them easy to work with, and for those more complex publish-subscribe patterns, where one message needs to go out to many different consumers, they both lean on a sister service in their ecosystem. For SQS, that's SNS, and for Azure, it's Event Grid. All right, now for the showdown. This is where things get really interesting, and this is probably where you're going to make your decision. The differences might seem a little subtle at first, but they are absolutely critical and can have a huge impact on how you design your application. And this table just lays it all out perfectly. Let's break it down. First up, message size. SQS gives you a much bigger message size at 256 kilobytes, while Azure maxes out at 64. That can be a big deal. Then there's ordering. With SQS, you have to specifically choose a FIFO queue to guarantee order. With Azure, though, the queues are just FIFO by their very nature. And architecturally, SQS is its own standalone service. An Azure queue, on the other hand, always lives inside a larger Azure storage account. So which one is right for you? Look, this isn't about which one is better overall. It's about which one is the better fit for what you're trying to do for your cloud environment and, of course, for your budget. So if you're building in the AWS world and you need a real powerhouse, a standalone queuing service that's built to handle massive scale for things like microservices or serverless apps with almost zero fuss, SQS is a fantastic choice. It's designed to just absorb huge volumes of messages without even breaking a sweat. But on the other hand, maybe your application already lives in the Azure ecosystem. If what you need is a simple, super reliable, and especially budget-friendly queue to handle background jobs or absorb traffic spikes, Azure Queue Storage is made for that. The way it's integrated into the storage account makes it a really cost-effective pick for a ton of common scenarios. So here's the key takeaway. Both of these services are excellent tools for building modern, resilient applications. The right choice really just depends on your architecture, your cloud provider, and your specific goals for performance and cost. So the real question isn't which queue is better. It's, Now that you have this power to connect and decouple your systems in such an amazing way, what are you going to build next?